I want to read you all something, and you need to be very careful about what you sign and not just glance over it and think you get the gist of it or that it does not pertain to you or your family. This is very, very important. And too many of us just glance over it and are too eager to sign something without actually reading everything sentence for sentence, word for word. When you apply for a job now, a lot of these companies are using an outside contracting source called HIRERIGHT. HIRERIGHT. They're an outside contractor that investigates your background, everything from your criminal report to your credit history to your driving record, everything. Now, I'm going to read this to you. By my signature below, I authorize the preparation of background reports about me, including my background reports that are investigative consumer reports, by HIRERIGHT, the outside investigative agency for a company, to furnish of such background reports to the company that you may be applying to and its designated representatives and agents, for the purpose of assisting the company in making a determination as to my eligibility for employment or engagement for services, including independent contractor or volunteer assignments as applicable, promotion, retention, or for other lawful employment purposes. I understand that if the company hires me, this is what you need to pay attention to. I like the way it's hidden down there, not in its own paragraph. This should be in its own paragraph. I understand that if the company hires me or contracts for my services, my consent will apply. Automatically, my consent will apply, and the company that you have applied to or plan on working for, and the company may, as allowed by law, that's what they say, obtain from HIRERIGHT, the investigative agency, outside contractor, or from consumer reporting agencies other than HIRERIGHT, additional background reports pertaining to me, meaning you. Here's the highlighted part I want you to pay specific attention to. Too many of you are too eager and quick to give up your rights. Additional background reports pertaining to me, you, the person reading this, without asking for my authorization again throughout my employment or contract period. I'll read it again. Without asking for my authorization again throughout my employment or contract period. These companies want to crawl up your ass. They want to know every move you make. They want to know if you put your left foot in front of your right foot, what time of day, and where it was at. Is what it boils down to. So once you sign this form, you have given them you've done away with your rights. And they don't need to ask you again, ever, to do a background check on you while you are in their employment or seeking employment with them, without asking for my authorization again. Basically, you're signing something that gives them anything they can find to harass you over and either keep you from getting a promotion or terminate you for any reason that they deem necessary, fabricate, and make up, whether it's true or not. And we all know how these reporting agencies, especially the credit reporting agencies, most of their information is not valid. It's bogus and it's fraudulent. And that's been proven many times during the housing crisis when companies were submitting to the credit reporting agencies falsified information that stuck on people's credit reports. And the same can go for criminal reports. If you've been arrested by mistaken identity and it was never taken off the record, when you sign this, you're giving away your rights and authorizing somebody else to constantly monitor your business, your personal business, not company business, your personal business when you sign this. I want you to be aware of that. You need to slow down in life and start reading some of this, comprehend it, and understand it. Because what you're doing is signing away your rights, your private and personal information. And don't assume because it's a company that they've got good intentions. And I don't care how big that company is, how legitimate they seem. You don't know who's working inside those companies. You don't personally know them and what their agendas are. No more than you know the people that you're getting ready to sign this document with, called HIRERIGHT. You don't know these people. You don't even know if they're in this country legally that you can't see. They have intentions, bad intentions. You don't know these people. I understand that the information included in the background reports may be obtained from a private and public record sources, including without limitation and as appropriate, government agencies and courthouses, educational institutions, and employers. Accordingly, I hereby authorize all of the following. So you automatically authorize by signing this document. To disclose information about me to the Consumer Reporting Agency and its agents, law enforcement, and all other federal, state, and local government agencies and courts, educational institutions, public or private, testing agencies, information service bureaus, credit bureaus, and other consumer reporting agencies, other public and private record data repositories, motor vehicle record agencies, my employers, the military, and all other individuals and sources with any information about or concerning me. In other words, you're giving them the right to turn over whatever information, personal information, to all these other groups when you sign this. The information that can be disclosed to the Consumer Reporting Agency and its agents includes, but is not limited to, information concerning my employment, earnings history, credit, motor vehicle and accident history, drug and alcohol testing, results in history, criminal history, litigation history, which meaning any lawsuits that you may have filed against somebody or lawsuits against you, military service, professional licenses, any credentials and certifications that you may hold from whatever organization, social security number verification, address and alias history, and other information. Any other information that's personal pertaining to you or your family can be disclosed to anybody they see fit, and you've given them authorization to do just that by signing this form with HIRERIGHT. Now, I don't know why a company needs to worry about your personal life to the point they would draw up a contract like this unless they've got ill intentions. By my signature below, I also promise that the personal information I provide with this form or otherwise in connection with my background investigation is true. Well, I don't know that it's true because I don't know what the background investigation is going to show up. It may be bogus information. And you're going to sit here and sign this and you haven't even seen it. You don't have any of that information in front of you to decipher whether the information that the company has is true and accurate on you or not. But you're going to sign this document claiming that it is, and you haven't even seen the information they got on you, if any. Think about that for a minute. And complete. I understand that dishonesty or material omission may disqualify me from consideration of employment. I agree that a copy of this document in faxed, photocopied, or electronic, including electronically signed, form will be valid like the signed original. I further acknowledge that I have received additional state law notices that I have reviewed and read. Not with my state, only the state of California, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New Jersey, New York, Washington State. And this is where it gets good. For additional information, hell, I'm not signing it. They don't need to dig into my personal background information. Not that there's anything there, because I've never been arrested. I've never been arrested for anything. What they need to be concerned about with everybody is, are they interested in the job, and are they going to show up? And can they do the job? Are they qualified and fit to do the job? They don't need to know all this personal goddamn information. It's none of their fucking business. But because of this, I'm going to dig into their background. See how many lawsuits are against this company. I'm also going to check their safety rating. And I'm going to let them know it. So before you go signing something without reading it and being a complete dumbbell and signing away your rights to your personal and private information, you see, this is what Facebook and Twitter do. Because people don't want to take the time to read. But I really, really want to read this one particular sentence in this paragraph that pertains to every one of you. And I urge you not to sign or go to work for anybody that uses HIRERIGHT. I understand that if the company hires me or contracts for my services, my consent will apply. And the company may, as allowed by law, they claim, obtain from HIRERIGHT, the investigative agency investigating most employees out here nowadays, even for the most minute jobs, or from a consumer reporting agency other than HIRERIGHT, additional background reports pertaining to me without asking for my authorization again, throughout my employment or contract period. Without asking for your authorization and permission again to dig into your personal information, your personal and private information that the company does not need to know about. It's none of their frickin' business. How much money you got in the bank, what checking accounts you have, who you filed a lawsuit against, who filed a lawsuit against you. It's none of their frickin' business. I want to know who's filed a lawsuit against these companies, or the CEO and management in particular. Now, this next move that I'm getting ready to make is where I decline this offer. And if you look down in the bottom of your screen, you will see the words Copyright 2004-2019 HIRERIGHT LLC. I'm getting ready to decline a job offer because I do not agree to the bullshit they're trying to pull. And what they're trying to do, it ain't got nothing to do with covering their ass. Half of this stuff they don't even need to know about you. You're just wanting to become an employee of the company. You're not doing a multi-million-dollar contract with them, or a contract worth hundreds of thousands of dollars as an outside contractor. This is, and I'm going to show you who the company is at the end of this video, but I'm getting ready to decline it. And I like this little pop-up that came up. It says, warning, a background check will not be run if you decline to give your consent. Are you sure you wish to decline? I'm going to read that again. Warning, a background check will not be run if you decline to give your consent, meaning dig into your personal life and your personal information just to become an employee. And we're not talking a high-paying job here. We're not talking an 80, 100, 150, 300,000 or $500,000 job or even $1 million lucrative salary. We're talking about a mediocre job with mediocre benefits. Are you sure you wish to decline? The answer is okay. So I've declined the offer. I'm not going to subject myself or be naive enough and stupid enough and dumb enough to give them permission to dig into things they don't really even need to know anything about, because there's really nothing to know about me. I've never been arrested. I have no criminal record. That doesn't mean they have the right to go digging around my credit history, my criminal history, unless I'm going to become the CEO of the company or the CE or the COO, or be in charge of writing paychecks, a financially responsible type person which we read about so many of these bookkeepers and swindling money out of companies' bank accounts. That ain't what I'm applying for. Why don't they make politicians sign documents like that? Evidently they don't, and we see how many politicians are corrupt and fraudulent, and nothing's ever done to them. Now, I want you to look up there at the top of your left-hand corner of your screen. Do you see what it says? The United States Department of Justice. That's what it says, United States Department of Justice. That's where this next information is coming from. Let's move on. Department of Justice, Office of Public Affairs, for immediate release, Wednesday, August 8th, 2012. Employment Screening Services Provider settles charges of violating Fair Credit Reporting Act. Oklahoma-based company agrees to pay United States $2.6 million penalty. A company that marketed public records about consumers to employers making hiring decisions agreed to settle charges that it violated the Fair Credit Reporting Act and pay $2.6 million in civil penalties. In the complaint filed today, we're down here now, United States alleged that HIRERIGHT Solutions Incorporation, an Oklahoma corporation based in Tulsa, Oklahoma, violated the Fair Credit Reporting Act by failing to comply with FCRA provisions designed to ensure the accuracy of background reports about potential employees. You get that? HIRERIGHT combined public information, including court records, into profiles provided to thousands of employers considering consumers for jobs, primarily in the trucking industry. We'll read that sentence again. HIRERIGHT combined public information, including court records, into profiles provided to thousands of employers considering consumers for jobs. I'm going to highlight this next. Primarily in the trucking industry. That shows you how not only corrupt and fraudulent the trucking industry is, but how ill-educated and uneducated those who work in corporate within the trucking industry are. These people are clueless that work in the corporate end of trucking. The human resource managers, the driver managers, the safety managers, right up to and including the CEO and the COO. These people don't know, and they don't care. They're not as educated as what they want everybody to believe they are. A, because they're too busy trying to do their jobs. And B, when they do have the time outside of their jobs, they have a family or other responsibilities to follow and take care of, they don't have time to research this and know what's going on. And if you brought it up to them, they'd look at you like a deer in the headlights. They wouldn't believe a word you're saying because they haven't heard of it. They've never heard of such BS until today. And I'm telling you, the trucking industry, as somebody with 30 years experience, been in the trucking industry for 30 years, I'm telling each and every one of you out here, whether you're an owner-operator, been an owner-operator for years, a company driver, or an owner, just getting into this business. The trucking industry is the most shadiest and seediest of businesses to be into. Dealing with brokers, dealing with dealerships. I'm talking freight brokers now. Truck dealerships that overcharge you for their parts and their labor. You've got the DOT, the Highway Patrol, and the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Association wanting to crawl up your ass every minute of the day and fine you and put you out of service, constantly costing you money, thousands of dollars. And if the freight brokers weren't bad enough by not paying you for the freight you hauled and then trying to run them down after you do haul the freight, and they won't answer their phone calls, and we all know about that, those of us who are independent owner-operators, not lease operators. Those independent guys own their own trailer, their own rig, and have their own authority. You have to file for that authority. It costs you money. We all know what trying to chase down a phony, fraudulent broker's like. I do. You company drivers may not know that much about that because you've never been on that end of the spectrum. Because all you've done is drove company trucks and answered to a dispatcher that dispatches you to haul freight. You don't know what it pays or how much it pays or for how many miles, and you don't care because you're getting paid by the hour or the mile, and you didn't line up the load, and it's out of your hands in the first place because you don't deal with the traffic departments. But this trucking industry has always been a shady, seedy business ever since the 60s and 70s, and it hasn't gotten any better with deregulation under Reagan. And that's where a lot of this started, was the deregulation of the trucking industry back in 1981-82. Let's read on. The complaint alleges that poor quality control led HIRERIGHT. The complaint alleges that poor quality control led HIRERIGHT to include erroneous and duplicate information in its reports. The complaint also alleges that HIRERIGHT failed to provide consumers timely access to the information in their own files and did not appropriately conduct investigations of disputed items when requested, because they did not have the staff to do it. So they're running a skeleton crew. Yet they're charging these companies big bucks and selling them bogus information. And you companies out there that we've already mentioned, Swift, Heartland Express, Estes, Freightways, the yellow and black guys with the yellow trucks and the red wheels that say E on the side for Estes, listen up. Inaccurate consumer reports can be qualified applicants from finding work. Inaccurate consumer reports can keep qualified applicants from finding work and keep employers from finding good employees, said Stuart Delury, Acting Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Division. In this age of increased collection and distribution of consumer information, aggressive enforcement of the FCRA, Fair Credit Reporting Act, ensures that these reports contain facts, not mistakes. I will put a link to this down below the video as well. Along with the $2.6 million civil penalty, HIRERIGHT agreed to injunctions against future FCRA and Federal Trade Commission Act violations in a proposed consent decree filed with the complaint. The consent decree also requires HIRERIGHT to maintain reasonable procedures to ensure the accuracy of reports and, upon request, to provide consumers the information in their files, such as criminal history reports. Access to these reports ensures that the consumers can dispute erroneous criminal history information that would substantially interfere with their ability to obtain a job. Well, we're going to see about that because I filed to have one sent to me, and supposedly they got 15 days to do it. I'll bet it don't happen. The FTC, which oversees the FCRA, referred the case to the Justice Department. The lawsuit, United States versus HIRERIGHT Solutions, was filed in the District Court of the District of Columbia. Acting Assistant Attorney General Delaire thanked the Federal Trade Commission for referring this matter to the department. The Consumer Protection Branch of the Justice Department's Civil Division brought the case on behalf of the United States. Acting Assistant Attorney General Delaire reminded consumers that they have a right to review the information collected by consumer reporting agencies and dispute incorrect entries. Consumers can report complaints to the FTC Federal Trade Commission through the agency's website, which you see there. I'll leave it up there so you can write it down, copy it, whatever it is you need to do to it. So I'm not new to this, and I want to pass this on to all you people because when you sign this thing with HIRERIGHT, where it specifically said in the beginning of the video, if you back up to it, that you agree that any of this information can be used against you, and you agree to it, whether now or in the future, by the company you're working for, well, that's bullshit. For starters, they got no reason to dig into your personal information. The only thing they need to know is what employers you work for, what your former employers thought of you, your criminal background check if you've ever been arrested or not, and you can get that from case.net, most anywhere in the country. These employers can go to case.net and find out by typing in your name and social security number whether you've ever been arrested or not. And for what? Felony or misdemeanor, drug-related or physical crime or murder. Case.net. They don't need to use this outside agency called HIRERIGHT. They don't need to know about your credit history. Your credit history has nothing to do with your job. So, the lower people on the spectrum, you don't need to do all this. This is all bogus bullshit. And how can you trust the people? Say you're applying for a job, and you don't know these people that are working in there. Just because they're working in there don't mean they're good people. There's a lot of fraudulent, corrupt people working in corporate. They have criminal intentions. They just haven't been caught yet. They could be selling your information, your social security numbers, your personal information to another entity that's selling it to another entity to give the illegals your social security number. And I got proof of that. That's in another video in there. Matter of fact, I may put it up as a sequel to this. Stolen social security numbers and personal information to get illegals driver's licenses using bogus, stolen social security numbers. It was a big ring here in Kansas and Missouri. I may just put that up to wake some people up. For all we know, this HIRERIGHT could be taking your personal information. Somebody inside HIRERIGHT, maybe the corporate people inside HIRERIGHT don't know this, but there could be somebody inside HIRERIGHT selling this information to somebody on the outside, and that person on the outside selling it to somebody else and using that information so that all these illegals have all your social security numbers. They can use them for fraudulent purposes, is what I'm trying to say. To obtain driver's licenses, welfare, credit. The less information you put out there, the less chances are somebody's going to end up with identity theft. But we've already seen that many of these companies dump some of this information in the dumpsters out back of their businesses instead of shredding the information or burning it. When identity theft and identity fraud starts happening, it all originates somewhere. And it originates with us giving this information, trusting it with you corporations and the people inside we don't even know. And you may not know that they're selling that information on the side, gaining financial prosperity out of it, until you get a visit from law enforcement. Let's get on with the rest of the video. Now I want to read this to you from the Federal Trade Commission, Protecting America's Consumers, where HIRERIGHT solutions went wrong. Most job seekers are familiar with the basics. Wear a clean shirt, extended firm handshake, and don't ask about vacations in the first 10 minutes of the interview. But these days, more businesses are digging deeper. Tulsa-based HIRERIGHT Solutions is a background screening company that thousands of employers use to check out current employees and people applying for jobs, even the most minute, low-paying jobs. When it comes to Fair Credit Reporting Act compliance, the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, says HIRERIGHT Solutions got it wrong by not using reasonable procedures to ensure the accuracy of the information it was selling. Selling your information, your personal and private information, to companies. The upshot? A $2.6 million civil penalty, the second largest ever in an FTC FCRA case. I'm going to read that again. The upshot, a $2.6 million civil penalty against HIRERIGHT, the second largest ever in an FTC FCR case. Think about that a minute. And companies are using this company, HIRERIGHT, which is not credible, as an information portal to gain information on prospective and potential and already current employees. I'm going to read all this to you. The background screening reports that HIRERIGHT Solutions sells are consumer reports under the FCRA. How so? We're leaving out some of the legalese, but the short answer is that they include information bearing on a consumer's credit worthiness, credit standing, credit capacity, character, general reputation, personal characteristics, or mode of living, which is used or expected to be used or collected in whole or in part for the purpose of serving as a factor in establishing the consumer's eligibility for credit, insurance, employment, or other purposes authorized under the FCRA. Yes, that's the short answer. Companies that sell or provide those reports are consumer reporting agencies under the statute. Just as an aside, the law uses the word agency. But these are private companies we're talking about. I'm going to read that again. But these are private companies we're talking about, not agencies like government agencies. Under the FCRA, consumer reporting agencies have a legal obligation to follow reasonable procedures to assure the maximum possible accuracy of the information that the reports contain. That's where the FTC says HIRERIGHT Solutions did not get it right. According to the complaint, the company didn't take reasonable steps to make sure the info in the reports was current and reflected updates, like the expungement of criminal records. The FTC says that sometimes the reports included multiple entries for the same offense. What's more, some reports listed convictions for people other than the applicant or employee, even though the person with the criminal record had a different middle name or date of birth. If a tomato soup stain on a tie can torpedo a job applicant's chances, imagine the effect of a wrongly reported rap sheet. Think about that. That's why I did not sign what I showed you earlier in the beginning of this video, because I do not know what this fraudulent, corrupt company that's not reputable, I don't know that the information they have on me is correct. And I'm not going to sign that document acknowledging or assuming that what the information they have is correct when I haven't seen it. And you shouldn't either. None of you. But the violations didn't end there. I'm down here in the second paragraph now, so follow along with me. The FCRA gives people the right to know about information reported to potential employers and sets up mandatory procedures people can use to challenge information they believe is inaccurate. According to the complaint, the company HIRERIGHT failed to live up to the FCRA's requirements that it turn over files to people who asked for them, didn't conduct a reasonable investigation when people disputed the accuracy of information, and didn't give people written notice of the results of the investigations. For example, down here now, for example, the FTC alleges that HIRERIGHT Solutions had a big backlog because it didn't hire enough staff. And I've been reading quite a bit about this. Didn't hire enough staff. I'm going to read it again. For example, the FTC alleges that HIRERIGHT out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, HIRERIGHT Solutions, had a big backlog because it didn't hire enough staff, employees, to respond to people's concerns about inaccuracies. The complaint also charges that the company set up unreasonable hoops people had to jump through to exercise their rights under the FCRA. In addition, the FCRA has special requirements for the consumer reporting agencies when their reports contain public record information that's used for employment purposes. If that info is likely to have an adverse effect on a person's ability to get a job, the law gives companies like HIRERIGHT Solutions two choices. Number one, notify the person anytime public record information is being reported, which they do not do, and I can attest to that. Number two, maintain strict procedures designed to ensure that reported public recorded data is complete and up to date, which they do not do. The complaint charges that HIRERIGHT Solutions had a system in place for notifying people, but it was too clunky to be of much practical use. I'm going to read that again. This is where we're at right here. Any attorneys and lawyers out there following along with this, if you're an attorney or a lawyer, hopefully you can follow along with what I'm saying so you know where I'm at. The complaint charges that HIRERIGHT Solutions had a system in place for notifying people, but it was too clunky to be of much practical use. In other words, it was too disorganized, unorganized, and the word I'm looking for is not clunky, but half-assed information to be of practical use. The FTC also charged that the company didn't maintain the strict procedures the law requires. Yet in that document that you read at the beginning of this, it talked all about the law that they break. In addition to the $2.6 million penalty, which this is where I'm at now, in addition to the $2.6 million penalty, the stipulated order puts provisions in place to change how HIRERIGHT Solutions does business going forward. Well, they're not abiding by it. Interested in a refresher of the do's and don'ts of using reports in the hiring process, read the Consumer Reports, What Employers Need to Know. Available on the BCP Business Center. We also have information especially for your HR team. If you're looking for a job, Learn more about your rights under the FCRA by reading the employment background checks. Now, do you remember when I told you earlier in the video that HIRERIGHT at one time was USIS? And they got sued, just like HIRERIGHT. And they filed for bankruptcy and sold out to another outfit and changed their names. Here we have, from January 23rd, 2014, Justice Department says USIS submitted 665,000 incomplete background checks. You see that up there? Justice Department, USIS submitted 665,000 incomplete background checks. Let's get more into this. January 23rd, 2014, lawmakers said Thursday that new details emerging from the Justice Department civil case against a leading company that conducts security background checks for the federal government may speed up legislation designed to clean up the once burgeoning contracting business. This week, the Justice Department filed a new complaint and a whistleblower's lawsuit it joined in October against USIS, a company that conducts background checks for nearly half of potential U.S. government hirees. This is how fraudulent this shit is, people. You can't depend on them, and why you companies are using companies like this, I'll never know. The filing accuses the Falls Church, Virginia firm of taking shortcuts in about 40% of the cases it handled. At least 665,000 in total, and in the process qualifying for nearly $12 million in performance bonuses from the federal government. You read this right here? And in the process qualifying for nearly $12 million in performance bonuses from the federal government. This is when Obama was in office. Yet USIS officials told the government that all the necessary reviews had been done. Well, sure, they're getting $12 million in performance bonuses from the federal government. They're going to tell you anything. Just like you trucking companies out there. They're telling you anything, and you're believing it. Flushed everything like goldfish, one USIS manager wrote in several emails cited in the court filing about how cases were being sped along to meet revenue targets. Flushed everything like dead goldfish, one USIS manager wrote in one of several emails cited in the court filing about how cases were being sped along to meet revenue targets. I mean, it's just... I'll leave a link to this video. Beginning in March of 2008 and continuing through at least September 2012, USIS management. See what I'm telling you? The people in management they're the ones that need a full security review and a background check. It's not the lower workers, the truck drivers and dock workers and mechanics. It's the management at these companies. USIS management devised and executed a scheme to deliberately circumvent contractually required quality reviews of completed background investigations in order to increase the company's revenues and profits, the Justice Department said in a filing Wednesday in U.S. District Court. I'll highlight the whole goddamn paragraph for you. In case any of you trucking executives out there don't believe it. USIS management devised and executed a scheme to deliberately circumvent contractually required quality reviews of completed background investigations in order to increase the company's revenues and profits. Of course, naturally, from the federal government. The Justice Department said in a filing Wednesday in U.S. District Court. The background reviews were incomplete because they had not undergone promised quality review. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, it's just, and you trucking companies and other companies out there want to trust companies like this to do a background on your employees, your truck drivers, your mechanics, your dock workers, your safety supervisors, maintenance personnel. Do you bother to research who you're doing business with in detail? You sure don't mind having these companies crawl up your employees' asses, supposedly, to look for anything and everything. Do you bother to look at the contractors that you're doing contracts with and paying big money? And I'm not talking about just the government. I'm talking about private companies out here, trucking companies, airlines, anybody affiliated with the airline, doing business, trucking companies, all kinds of trucking companies and airlines. And you trust these people to do background checks. They're going to tell you anything. And none of their information's accurate, as we're finding out by watching this video. Wake up. If you're in corporate management, you need to wake up. If you know somebody who's in corporate management, you need to show them this video. This needs to be seen by every single corporate person out there, and CEO, COO. Because I'm telling you right now, y'all are being hoodwinked. And it's for your money. They don't care whether the information they give you back on an employee or current employee is legitimate or not. It's all about the money. Getting money out of you companies. Now, you've seen the video. I've pointed out a lot to you. This is about USIS before they became HIRERIGHT and got bought out, took over. Because before it was USIS, it was DAC Services out of Oklahoma. And they faced the same thing. We'll get into that in a minute. And if you look in the top left-hand corner of your screen, you'll see Security Clearance blog. USIS whistleblower finally compensated for doing the right thing. March 15th, 2016, not that long ago. The man who blew the lid off security clearance fraud committed by former OPM contractor, USIS, finally got compensated for his perseverance and courage to speak up and do the right thing. In an article in the Workston Post detailed how Blake Percival, a former USIS director of Fieldwork Services, went from an extravagant office in western Pennsylvania, making $110,000 a year, to getting fired and his family having to live at his parents' house in Alabama with barely enough money to feed his family. Percival filed a civil lawsuit against USIS, and after 4.5 years of dealing with the justice system, Percival was awarded a little bit over $6 million, of which he will get $3.3 million after paying off all his legal fees. Percival was fired by USIS after he refused an order to continue the practice of dumping cases. You see that right there? He refused an order to continue the practice of dumping cases. Prior to this, he had conducted some inquiries and discovered the office he had just taken over had been committing fraud. Oh man, I gotta highlight this. Prior to this, he had conducted some inquiries and discovered the office he had just taken over had been committing fraud by claiming it had reviewed completed investigations before sending them back to OPM. Office of Personnel Management, what that stands for. If you don't know, OPM is Office of Personnel Management within the government when it had not done the reviews. USIS senior management were aware of and condoned the practice, filling the company coffers with millions of dollars in performance bonus payouts. And that's what these background companies are all about. Big money. USIS senior management were aware of and condoned the practice, filling the company coffers with millions of dollars in performance bonus payouts from the U.S. government, as well as other companies, private companies. Had the Justice Department not joined the lawsuit in 2013, who knows if USIS would have been forced out of the security clearance business, or if Percival would have been able to fight and win his case. Although the road for Percival was hard, financially, emotionally, and professionally, it shows that at the end of the day, doing the right thing is the right thing to do. Which is what I'm doing here. I'm exposing the fraud and corruption with these supposed background check companies, because there ain't nothing legitimate about them. It's all about conning companies into giving them money, and they don't have enough staff to even do a background check, as we're finding out. They run a skeleton crew. It should not, with today's technology in 2019, 2018, 2020, it should not take more than 24 hours to do a background check and get an employee hired. I was told today it could take a week or longer to do a background check. And she knows this. And she knows this because she's dealt with them. She knows how slow they are. And why they're continuing to do business with them, I don't know. It's probably not up to her. It's up to somebody higher up in corporate within Estes Freight Lines. Why you at corporate at Estes Freight Lines or any other company in the trucking business or airline business would use companies that, and you don't do any background or research on them. You just go ahead and pay them because you think they're going to do the right thing. You just assume that they're going to do right and give you the right information because they're a background check company. They wouldn't be in business if they were fraudulent. Really? Are you sure about that? I just got through showing you quite a bit of video as to how fraudulent these background check companies are. And I hope every truck driver and airline worker out there shows this to their employer. Because I can't do this in a short, quick video. There's no way. There's too much information. It's a lengthy video, and I know it. But I got to show you everything that there is. It's just pathetic how naive, clueless, and ignorant some of these people in corporate really are. I mean, you'd have to be stupid to just assume. But it's not your money. Those who make the decisions, it's not your money, it's the corporate money. And it's not coming out of your bank account, so you really don't give a shit. That's what it boils down to. 27 and counting. Another background check dumper pleads guilty. July 24th, 2018. This is published July 24th, 2018. 27 and counting. Another background check dumper pleads guilty. Let's get into this. Last week, the Justice Department announced that another investigator was caught falsifying information on background checks of federal government and contractor employees. The investigator pleaded guilty to making a false statement. She admitted that on more than 24 occasions in 2014 and 2015, she falsely claimed to have interviewed sources or reviewed records pertaining to individuals seeking positions that grant access to classified information or affect national security. Jesus. The investigator was ordered to reimburse the government the nearly $190,000 it cost to redo her cases and faces up to 18 months in prison. Should have been 18 years in prison. Jesus Christ. According to the announcement, this is the 27th prosecution since 2008 involving falsified background checks. This investigator was employed by U.S. Investigation Services, USIS, and Key Point Government Solutions, contractors for the Office of Personnel Management. She is the latest investigator caught dumping or flushing cases, submitting cases to the office under the false assurance they are complete and properly reviewed. In 2014, the government filed a lawsuit against USIS. It's unbelievable. U.S. Investigation Services Management filed a lawsuit against USIS claiming its employees had dumped or flushed at least $665,000. I gotta highlight this. This is crazy. What I didn't know all this was going on. This is news to me like it is you guys. Under the false assurance, they are complete and properly reviewed. In 2014, the government filed a lawsuit against USIS claiming its employees had dumped or flushed at least 665,000 background checks. The company, which earned notoriety for having screened NSA leaker Edward Snowden and Navy Yard shooter Aaron Alexis, settled the lawsuit for $30 million in 2015. By that time, USIS had lost most of its federal businesses and filed for bankruptcy. And this is what I want to get at, guys. Everybody out here watching this, I don't care if you're a truck driver, a diesel mechanic, a dock worker on a trucking dock, if you work for the airlines and you're a pilot, a stewardess, an airline mechanic, ground personnel, you're in management at an airline, along with management at a truck line, this is what I'm getting at. This is what I'm trying to expose and show you, because it's not coming out in mainstream media news. I can tell you that much right now. By the time USIS had lost most of its federal businesses and filed for bankruptcy. Now, they filed for bankruptcy, right? Well, they're paying out all these millions of dollars. So who took them over? HIRERIGHT. Bought what was left of the company. HIRERIGHT. And they hired the same people that were working for USIS. And HIRERIGHT's now doing the same thing that USIS and DAC Services did. When I say DAC, I'm talking DAC Services, not DACK. DAC. DAC Services did the exact same goddamn thing. They got in trouble, got sued for millions of dollars, and they switched their name to USIS. Got bought out. Switched their name, filed for bankruptcy. And that's exactly as you highlight right here in blue where it's highlighted. By that time, USIS had lost most of its federal business and filed for bankruptcy. Well, when you file for bankruptcy, what do you think happens? You sell what's left of the company and you change its name. And it changed its name to HIRERIGHT. Last week's guilty plea is a reminder that serious problems still plague the federal security clearance system. Fallout from the USIS fraud scandal continues. Massive breaches of USIS and key point computer systems compromised the personal data of millions of current, former, and federal employees, further validating our long-standing government relies too heavy on contractors to conduct background checks. Well, I want to highlight this right here. Has compromised the personal data of millions of current and former federal employees, as well as any other employees in the private sector. And I wish they would have stated that. Because a lot of trucking companies, back from 2000, 2003 to about 2010, 12, were still using USIS. I finally got wise to them. I wouldn't even apply or work for a company that used USIS to do a background check. Guess what? Some of those trucking companies aren't in business anymore because they couldn't find anybody to work for them. People got wise. Let that be a lesson to the rest of you trucking companies out there that are now in business. You can't find drivers. You can't find mechanics. You can't find dock workers. Same with you airlines. The reason is people aren't going to submit to this bullshit. All you need to know about is former employers and criminal history. You don't need to know about credit history. We're not dealing with money, most of us. Large amounts of money. We're not writing checks, employee checks, by the hundreds every week or thousands. And most of you use an outside agency to do the checks anymore because you can't trust your own employees. That says something about the kind of people you hire, doesn't it? The kind of money you're spending on these contractors to do all your work, these hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars, you could just hire 3 or 4 people to work for your company to do these background checks and pay them a decent salary and benefits. Why are you paying an outside contractor to do what you could be doing internally? Something wrong with that right there, other than you're using that as a tax write-off so you don't have to pay taxes on that money. It's just, I'll leave a link below this video too. There's going to be so many links below this video, you're going to be 6 months reading this shit. Ex-employees of bankrupt security clearance firm aim to resolve some unfinished business. Former USIS workers pursue class action suit against one-time OPM DHS contractor. This is dated November 13th, 2015, right here. November 13th, 2015. Let's look deeper. Former staffers of one of the government's most prominent defunct contractors continue to battle for a share of the shrinking pie. As many as 2,000 jobless former employees, of U.S. Investigative Services, USIS, are proceeding with a class action suit against the firm's ex-directors and officers, seeking redress under the Workers' Adjustment and Retraining Notification, WARN, Act, which requires 60 days advance notice of mass layoffs. USIS spun off from the Office of Personnel Management in '96 as an efficiency measure, enjoyed lucrative agency background check work and field support contracts in its earlier years, and has a lumini competing contractors industry-wide. But more recently, USIS also earned some black marks. The Justice Department filed a $1 billion suit against a Falls Church, Virginia-based firm for dumping as many as 665,000 incomplete background checks on OPM to meet deadlines, while postmortems on the Edward Snowden domestic surveillance leaks and the 2013 Aaron Alexis Navy Yard shooting showed that USIS had conducted their background checks, though agency officials approved the clearances. Lawmakers became angry that the troubled USIS parent company awarded its executives bonuses. I mean, oh my God. I'm just now getting word of this. Not one word out of mainstream media about any of this. Not one word. I'll put this link down below the video too. Read it for yourselves. Print it off. Show it to your employers. Seriously. Now let's go look at DAX services. Okay, before I go any further with this, because we're going back in time a little bit here, so I want you to follow along with me. If you're a lawyer or an attorney, or somebody in the Justice Department, or the Federal Trade Commission, or works for the Justice Department, or Federal Trade Commission, or you're a lawyer or attorney, or work for a lawyer or attorney's law firm, I want you to be able to follow along with me. If you're a trucker, works in the trucking industry, or an airline worker, a pilot, stewardess, whatever, I want you all to be able to follow along with me. Again, I'll put links down below the video. But how I find most of what I'm finding, that most of you may not have the scruples to find what I'm digging for, is I type in the company I'm looking for, and I either type in lawsuits, or type in the company I'm looking for and put problems. Let me give you an example. This is an example up here. If you look in the top upper hand corner of the video, you'll see I've got typed in DAC services lawsuits. Now you could type in DAC services problems, but you'll get a lot of complaints from people that write in and not actual legal jargon from the Department of Justice Federal Trade Commission. And that's what I'm after. Now, a lot of people got a lot of complaints that are legitimate. Some of them is because the people didn't exactly, well, they got criminal backgrounds and they're pissed, and so it's their way of getting back. But I'm after the legality of what these companies are doing. I've already showed you some complaints at the beginning of the video that people wrote in. Now I'm taking you to the legality. So if you type in whatever company you're looking for, and behind, after you type in, say, for an example, the Magic Marker Company, you type that in and then you put lawsuits behind it. Or you could say Magic Marker Company problems, Magic Marker Company lawsuits. And that's how I come up with most of this. You got to type in the right keywords or nothing's going to show up. Now this is from March 25th of 2014. Swift Transportation agrees to $4.4 million class action settlement over background checks. You see it right there, Swift Transportation. That's the white trucks with the blue letters that say Swift on them. Swift Transportation has agreed to pay a $4.4 million settlement to settle a class action lawsuit filed in July 2013 after a truck driver filed a complaint against a mega carrier. The driver alleged that Swift failed to properly disclose its hiring practices, including background checks. Are you listening, Estes? As many as 10,000 drivers may be part of the class, according to the plaintiff's motion for preliminary approval filed Monday, April 21st in federal court in Virginia. Plaintiff's attorneys state Swift's improper hiring practices go back 6 years, and those who applied for a trucking job with Swift Transportation from July 23rd of 2008 to September 30th of 2012 may be part of the class. According to court documents, James Ellis III, a named plaintiff in the case, filed suit claiming the company does not provide or obtain appropriate disclosure and authorization from job applicants prior to acquiring these criminal background reports. Ellis claims that after he applied for a job with Swift in 2012, the company procured a consumer report and criminal background check from HIRERIGHT without his consent. That's why I did not click the box in the beginning of the video authorizing them to do a background check on me, and I did not sign it, and instead I refused to do it because of what you have just read throughout this video. After receiving Ellis's background report, Swift took adverse action against Ellis, disqualifying him from further consideration for employment, and did not provide him with a pre-adverse action notice, a violation of FCRA. At no time did Swift provide plaintiff Ellis with the notice required by the Fair Credit Reporting Act within 3 business days of taking the adverse action. The complaint alleges Ellis claims he was not informed by Swift that he could request a free copy of the report and dispute the accuracy and completeness of the report within the Consumer Reporting Agency. And I know another trucking company that's doing the same thing, but instead of saying you were turned down for the job, they're putting you on hold for other reasons, and you're not getting hired. Back to Todd Spencer with OIDA, Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, as to the shortage in truck drivers. There is no shortage of truck drivers. there is a shortage in people in management at these trucking companies that know what the hell they're doing, because they do not. And it clearly shows. Swift agrees to and will cause to be paid a total sum of $4.4 million, including attorney's fees and costs and service awards to those named plaintiffs to settle all claims set forth by the preliminary settlement class, according to court documents. According to the proposed preliminary settlement, McGlady, LLP, an independent third party, will administer the settlement if approved. A year ago, in April 2013, U.S. Express settled a class action lawsuit for $2.75 million over background checks involving HIRERIGHT, which was also fined $2.6 million by the Federal Trade Commission in August 2012 for numerous violations under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. This is being reported by OIDA, OOIDA, out of Green Valley, Missouri. OIDA stands for Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. They are a credible company. I used to be a member of them. And not just because they're credible because I was a member of them. They are actively involved politically in the trucking industry, sticking up for truckers, truck drivers, and owner-operators that own their own rig from being used fraudulently and by corrupt, fraudulent companies who get them to haul freight for nothing, or buy trucks through a company, and the company ends up taking it away from them because the freight slows down and they can't make any money to pay for the truck, which is why they sell the trucks to truckers in the first place, known as the truth in leasing. And that's any company that tries to sell you a truck, a trucking company, tries to sell you a truck to come to work for them, there is fraud and corruption involved. They're not going to come out and admit it. You would have to go research the truth in leasing lawsuits. That's what you would want to type in Google. The truth in leasing lawsuits. Specifically with Prime out of Missouri, and with C.R. England out of Salt Lake City, Utah. If you're wanting to do research into that, Prime out of Missouri, Truth in Leasing Lawsuits, and C.R. England out of Salt Lake City, Truth in Leasing Lawsuits. And watch what comes up. Give you something to research. It'll be several hours of research. If there's any lawyers or attorneys out there that are watching this video, would like to do that kind of research, I just gave you the information you need, because I've been following this for the last 15 to 20 years. OIDA, Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, has filed lawsuits and won against C.R. England and Prime and other companies for just that. As many as 10,000 drivers may be part of the class according to the plaintiff's motion for preliminary approval filed April 21st in federal court in Virginia. Plaintiff's attorney states Swift's improperly hiring practices go back 6 years, and those who applied for a trucking job with Swift from July 23rd, 2008 to September 30th of 2012 may be part of the class. According to court documents, James Ellis, a named plaintiff in the case, filed suit, claiming the company does not provide or obtain appropriate disclosure and authorization from job applicants prior to acquiring these criminal background checks. So I'll leave this link below the video for you to read yourself. But I'm telling you, this HIRERIGHT is not a credible company, and why you companies are using them like a bunch of clueless, naive clowns, you people in management and the owners of companies out there. It's your job to do the research. of the company you're hiring to see if they're credible or not. You can't call up the company and ask them if they're credible or not, because they're going to tell you yes. They're not going to tell you. It's like the fox guarding the hen house. I'll say it again in case some of you educated people out there don't get it, especially those in management. It's like the fox guarding the hen house. Now, do you remember in the beginning of the video I told you about DAC Services? How it got sued and later became, and it went bankrupt and later became USIS? And now it's HIRERIGHT? Well, here it is. DAC violated trucker rights. HIRERIGHT sued by Department of Justice. I'm telling you, people. I've been following this for years. I've seen a lot of drivers and airline workers not get hired, and there was no reason not to hire them, just that these people's information isn't correct, and they don't care if it's correct. But this is what happens when you let tons and tons of illegals into this country. It puts American workers under the microscope, the magnifying glass, for anything they can find, yet the illegal aliens who are here illegally, breaking the law, they get hired. You see where this is playing into? Let's look further. It says the blatant inaccuracies and false information on some DAC reports is not news to thousands of drivers, truck drivers, who have felt blackballed in the trucking industry due to HIRERIGHT's driver record database. But HIRERIGHT's immoral business practices have finally been exposed to the rest of America by the Department of Justice and the Federal Trade Commission. HIRERIGHT collects background information on drivers, creating a DAC report on each driver, which is used to screen drivers when they apply for a job. Among multiple serious violations of consumer protection laws, the FTC alleges that HIRERIGHT sold DAC reports on drivers that were incorrectly listed criminal convictions and failed to take reasonable steps to make sure the information on reports was accurate as possible. And I'm going to stop right there. The reason they didn't take steps to make sure the information on reports was accurate is because they never ever bothered to notify the actual person that the report is being prepared on, that there was a report being prepared on them. They never contact the driver, the potential employee, or the current employee. They don't do anything. They do absolutely nothing. Until you go and apply for a job somewhere, or somebody in the company decides to run a background check on you, and all this bogus, phony, fraudulent information shows up that's not accurate at all by any means. Only then, if somebody within the company tells you about it, can you take action. Most people don't even know that this company, HIRERIGHT, is looking into anything of them. Or there'd be one hell of a class action lawsuit against them. And there would be lawyers and attorneys in multiple lines by the hundreds waiting to file a lawsuit against HIRERIGHT. Class action lawsuits at that. HIRERIGHT, we're here now. I'll show you where I'm at now. Not here. HIRERIGHT agreed to pay $2.6 million to settle the charges brought by the Department of Justice and the Federal Trade Commission. This doesn't have to be the full extent of HIRERIGHT's punishment for decades of mismanagement. The Federal Trade Commission is encouraging drivers with inaccuracies on their DAC reports to contact them using their online form, FTC Complaint Assist, all drivers are entitled to receive a free copy of their DAC report by submitting a request here. I mean, I'll put a link to this below the video too. DAC violated trucker rights. HIRERIGHT sued by Department of Justice. Let that sink in. If you're a truck driver out there, whether you're an owner-operator, a company driver, an airline worker, in any phase of airline work at all, I'm telling you, when they started this shit of inviting a third party to look into your background for the company, you can expect rampant fraud and corruption throughout, because it's all about the dollars. That's what it's about. It's not about being honest. It's not about morals. It's about the dollar. And if they can get these companies to buy the information, no matter how fraudulent or bogus it is, and sell it to the company so that these investigative companies can make money, that's what it's about. It's about the investigative companies' bottom dollar, their bottom line, profits. Profits. That's all they care about. Whether that information is honest, true, accurate, they could give a shit less. And now they'll try to spin it off as most of the information they got was from you, the prospective employee, or the current employee, which is also a lie. And they never bother to notify anybody to see if they want to dispute or update the information until after you find out you didn't get hired by a potential employer, or you've been fired from the current job you're in because of a background check, which turned out to be bogus. Think about that. And then remember Facebook and Twitter, how they take your information and sell it, but you never get a dime. And yet you read the agreement and you signed it, but you didn't really read the agreement. You scanned through it and were in a hurry, clicked the checkbox, and agreed to the terms of service. You didn't really read it word for word, sentence for sentence, paragraph for paragraph, and comprehend it and understand it, because it's like credit card agreements. The terminology and phraseology is so twisted and contradicting. One sentence contradicts another sentence that most people without a legal degree, a law degree, don't understand what they just read. And it's not just one paragraph, it's multiple. Could be as many as 15 pages of terms of service with a credit card agreement. You end up agreeing to things you don't really agree to because you didn't read it, but yet you signed it. And if they sell out to another credit card company who raises the rates, you agreed to that too. But you didn't read the agreement because you were in a big hurry and thought you understood it, and it's just a bunch of legal jargon that doesn't pertain to you. Well, guess what? It does pertain to you. That's why they had lawyers draw it up and word it the way they worded it. Because it's against you. Think about that. That's exactly what these background check companies are now doing, and you've seen it at the beginning of my video. If not, go back to the very beginning of my video, watch the first 10 minutes, and you will see they wanted you to agree to all kinds of things that you don't really agree to. They wanted you to sign it and put 2 check marks in the box, which I did not, and nor did I sign it. I wasn't that stupid. No, I don't agree to that. I don't agree to letting them do a background check on me like they're wanting to do, because I don't agree that the company I'm going to work for, to let them snoop into my background anytime they want, without my permission. And it specifically said that. Without your permission, you agree to let the company look into your background at any time without your permission, without your knowledge? No. I can't look into the CEO's background anytime I want. Can I? Would he agree to that? No, he would not. You know why? Because he's smart and intelligent. He doesn't want anybody looking into his background. These corporate people, I'm telling you, they're the ones that need to be looked into. When they go to a lawyer or a company and they draw shit up like this, or accept it from another company and then put it out there for their employees to sign that they agree, I have to question the integrity and morals of those in corporate who would allow that to happen. I'm going to say it again. I would question the integrity, morals, and honesty of those in corporate, any corporation, any company, that would allow that kind of phraseology, terminology, and wording into a contract for their employees to sign and not go over it with them so they understand exactly what they're signing. Especially in the trucking and the airline industry, because a lot of people just aren't that educated that are in that business. They may have a high school diploma and 1 or 2 years of community college in fine arts or some stupid degree, but they're not lawyers. They don't have law degrees, and they really don't understand what they're reading, and they're not politically active. Now, I took 4 years of law school, so I understand what I'm reading and what they're getting at. And you have to read between the lines with some of this because they don't come out and spell it right. And they try to trick you. The way they word their language, the terminology. And if you're not careful, they always bury the most important sentences, the very most important sentences, in a big paragraph. The most legal terms, legal sentences, they're never separated by themselves with any parentheses around it that says read carefully. They always bury the most pertinent information that pertains to you to try to trick you in a big, large paragraph of their contract, hoping you'll not see it, not understand it, not comprehend it, and go ahead and sign it, and then they got you. They got you because you signed it and you didn't read it thoroughly, and if you did read it, you didn't understand what you read because you weren't capable of comprehending what you just read. Now this is interesting from January 29th, 2016. Blacklisted truck driver awarded over $100,000 for false DAC report. You see that right there? Blacklisted truck driver awarded over $100,000 for false DAC report. Back to the beginning of my video, when you hear all these news reports on CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News, and CBS, and NBC, and ABC News about a shortage of truck drivers. No, there's no shortage of truck drivers. Trust me, I've been in this business 30 years. There is no shortage of truck drivers. There is a shortage of good companies to work for that don't shit all over their employees. Now I want to read this to you. OOIDA President, Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association out of Grain Valley, Missouri, President and CEO Todd Spencer testified to Congress on behalf of the association's more than 160 members on Wednesday, June 12th of 2019 in Washington, D.C., as part of the subcommittee hearing titled Under Pressure, the State of Trucking in America.
I know all of you on this subcommittee have heard about the driver shortage. I have too, pretty much my entire career in trucking. Guess what? They ain't one. Simple math tells the story. When the number you hear is 50,000 or some other number for the shortage, states issue over 400,000 new CDLs every year. Every year. What is incorrectly labeled as shortage is actually turnover, attrition. People attracted to trucking with the hopes of doing better for themselves and their family are quickly met with unkept promises and say goodbye to trucking. I really can't think of a worse response to the myth of a driver shortage than to lower the driving age or reduce the already low standard to get a CDL. This really is a highway safety issue. What's not a myth is that new drivers crash more often and younger drivers crash more often. There is no substitute for experience when it comes to safety, and doing things that help perpetuate the churn or driver turnover is not only counterproductive to safety, but it undermines the economics for all drivers. Our organization is not a proponent of lowering the permissible driving age for commercial drivers below 21. And, everything about this committee is about safety. When we look at the numbers of crashes, of where crashes take place, and the drivers, you don't take that age down, you take it up. You take it up to at least 25, which is largely what it was back in the 70s when I entered trucking. This is just a copy of the regulations that all drivers are required to comply with. They're trained on virtually none, but they're there because they can be held responsible even when they should have no responsibility. It is a monstrous problem that has actually cost trucking specifically as much as $3 billion a year, in society over $5 billion. But the way it plays out is it means driver work weeks are always going to be 70 to 80 hours and sometimes longer. Now, they're not always working all of those hours, but their time is being controlled by others. And the biggest bandits on that deal are going to be shippers and receivers. And I should point out that these folks, even now, in some instances, have the gall to actually charge drivers for late deliveries. Many of the regulations that are on the books today hold drivers accountable for everything that could possibly go wrong, but none of those really address the frustrations and the lost time that drivers will spend in shipping and receiving facilities. Again, we're talking about anywhere from 10 to as much as 45 hours a week, every week. That puts the work week for a truck driver at 80, sometimes more hours per week. When somebody's considering an occupation, a career, do they take one that works 40 or 45 hours a week where you're home, or one that's 80 hours or more and you're away from home and you don't make more money? I don't think that's a real tough decision. People are going to make the decision that works best for them, and who can blame them?
Now, this next paragraph is fairly important because it's going to lead up to what I'm getting ready to show you later in the video about who HIRERIGHT used to be and why they're now called HIRERIGHT. So I'm going to read the paragraph. Hiring the actual company. Actually, the hiring company provides the guidelines they want the investigation company to follow. It can be as little as full name and date of birth, or it can be as much as a full credit report, fingerprinting, and photo identification. The more criteria searched, though, the more expensive the process is. At least when HIRERIGHT was still USIS, and this is very important, at least when HIRERIGHT, highlight it right here, was USIS, the search method used for crims was significantly more in-depth than a database search. Some companies also request history of civil actions, though it's pretty rare, and usually isolated to company officers. In short, the reason all that stuff came back is because the company you applied with is a cheapskate. Well, to some degree, you're right. But this point right here, at least when HIRERIGHT was still USIS. Very important, because later in the video, I'm going to show you why HIRERIGHT is now called HIRERIGHT and it used to be USIS. And before USIS, It was called DAC Services out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And DAC Services had so many lawsuits against them, into the hundreds of millions of dollars, that they filed for bankruptcy and changed their name and became USIS. Years later, USIS fell under the same thing, a lot of lawsuits against them. And they changed their name to HIRERIGHT. What that you got here is a non-credible reporting agency. And you can tell by the damn paragraphs I'm reading here. People are writing in. They don't have anywhere else to turn to. I mean, this is worse than Facebook and Twitter put together. February 14th, 2013. I think it's worse than any of you can imagine. HIRERIGHT claims to own the data they collect from you. This is your personal identity and work history. They may share it with their partners, whoever they may be. If the company is acquired, and this is important because it goes back to what I just said. If the company is acquired, your data is part of the sale. Ask yourself if you really understood or wanted them to be custodians of this data. Very important that you people slow down in life and pay attention and comprehend what you're reading. Because you're selling yourself short. You're opening up the door to Pandora's box of your own personal life. Ask yourself if you really understood or wanted them to be the custodians of this data, your personal information. Or why is it necessary for them to store it after the background check is complete? This data is valuable and will eventually be targeted by criminals and hackers. Does HIRERIGHT encrypt the database where your data is stored? That's a good question. Who knows? No, their website does not confirm this. Individuals should have the right to have their identity data deleted from HIRERIGHT after the process of verification is completed. Why doesn't the FTC give us the remedy for this? Please, FTC, step in here. It is also wrong of your employer to force you to directly work with this third-party company. It is also wrong to work with your employer to make you work directly with this third-party company. That may be wrong. I don't know if it's illegal. Whose management and custody of your identity you may not trust. And that's a good point. By forcing you to enter data into HIRERIGHT, your company is washing their hands clean of the custodial risk of data. Yet your company will make you sign a confidentiality agreement, a contract, where they have recourse directly with you under defined terms. But they do not grant you the same courtesy with your private identity data. What's the answer here? Do we start demanding our companies sign a confidentiality agreement with our personal data? Should we demand the FTC offer protection and remedy here? That's a good point. That's a very good point what you just brought up here, Jim. Dated February 14th of 2013. You're very, very astute in your thinking. I'm going to read that paragraph to you again. By forcing you to enter data into HIRERIGHT, it's a fraudulent company. They're not credible. Already been proven. Your company is washing their hands, or the company you're applying to, clean of the custodial risk of that data. Yet your company will make you sign a confidentiality agreement or a contract where they have recourse directly with you under defined terms. But they do not grant you the same courtesy with your private identity data. What's the answer? Do we start demanding our companies sign a confidentiality agreement with our personal data? Should we demand FTC offer protection and remedy here? Thoughts. That's a damn good thought, because that's true. And this is from May 10th, 2014. Guys, I'm just going to say one last thing. from a former insider's point of view. HIRERIGHT screwed up. They were understaffed years ago, and I have no doubt they're even worse now. However, they perform searches based on criteria given by the companies who contact them is what it should have said, like a potential employer. If you have a problem with only your name and birth date being used to perform a search, speak with the company with whom you are applying. They are the ones in control. Some even say that if anything comes back at all, even a lack of credit history, you will be turned down. So if you're a young person with no credit history, you're going to get turned down. That's pretty much what he's saying. All of us in my office, each of us highly trained and intelligent, many specializing in one or two industries, spoke up against these issues more than once. In the end, though, we had no control. Everything came down to the company purchasing our services, meaning your potential employer paying HIRERIGHT for bogus information. I hope that by this point they fixed their mistakes and reevaluated their process. This includes hiring sufficient staff, not only for the sake of the hirees, but for HIRERIGHT staff's safety and comfort. Because let me tell you, we worked ourselves into the dust. The pay was lousy, and the clients could be nightmares, but we kept coming to work because we genuinely performed a necessary service. Do you really want to know just how many convicted child molesters can apply at an elementary school? I don't doubt that. We've been seeing that in the news. Ones who didn't register when they moved into the state? Because I do. The number probably isn't as high as you fear, but even catching one made a bad day worth it. The company and industry may not be perfect, but I'd sure as hell rather have them around than not. Well, I have to disagree with you there. When they start selling people's personal information to these companies, and these companies are so naive, clueless, and brain dead that they would actually use a company like HIRERIGHT or any other company with as much bad information out there as HIRERIGHT is, especially after this is on the FTC's website, then you got a problem with not only the company management, not in HIRERIGHT, but the potential employer and the company you're wanting to go to work for. Their management is so clueless and naive, I don't want to work for them. Think about that. I want to read this important piece here that I found on Wikipedia. Legal issues with service of HIRERIGHT. HIRERIGHT was the subject of a number of class action and Fair Credit Reporting Act lawsuits. In 2011, the company paid $280 million to plaintiffs who accused HIRERIGHT of failing to provide copies of reports to job applicants and failing to resolve disputes. Much like the three credit reporting agencies were sued back in 2009, 2010, 2011 during the housing crisis. And on August 8th, 2012, right here is where we're at. On August 8th, 2012, the U.S. Department of Justice announced HIRERIGHT settled charges of violating the FCRA for $2.6 million. So they knowingly and willfully violated the Fair Credit Reporting Act. That's what FCRA stands for, Fair Credit Reporting Act. Companies. We're down here on this paragraph now. I want you all to follow along with me because this involves every one of you out there. Don't just breeze through this video. Companies that use background check services must follow FCRA Fair Credit Reporting Act procedures or face class action liability with millions of dollars in exposure. We're going to stop there because that's exactly what happened to USIS and exactly what happened to DAX Services. All this used to be DAX Services. And then they had to file for bankruptcy and it became USIS. They did the same thing and now it's HIRERIGHT. When you big companies want to use this, if you're in management or you're the owner of a big company or corporation and you're in upper management you need to be aware of this video. You need to look at yourself and say, why are we using such a fraudulent, corrupt company that does not have a good reputation? You can't depend on them, and their information is bogus. In other words, they're not credible. I'm going to say it again. They're not credible, and yet your company, your corporation, is paying this company. They're going to feed you any kind of information they can. They don't care if it's credible or not, as long as they get your money from the big corporation. That's all they do. That's all they care about, is fattening their bottom line at your expense and feeding you a bunch of crap. And you don't know whether to believe it or not. So basically, you're a bunch of naive, clueless idiots that work in corporate, that somebody could feed you a line of shit and you'll buy it. And you don't second guess anything. You need to take a look at yourselves. Companies that use background check services must follow FCRA procedures or face class action liability with millions of dollars in exposure. According to a Wall Street Journal investigation into hiring practices in the trucking industry, class action lawsuits were brought against trucking companies over how they use HIRERIGHT. HIRERIGHT customers U.S. Express settled in 2013 for $2.7 million, and Swift in 2014 for $4.4 million over their failure to disclose hiring practices. Estes Freightways, guess what? You're right in sights. You didn't disclose anything to any of the potential employees who you were using as a background services investigation. All you would say was, as soon as the background information is complete, we'll be in touch with you, without one word of saying who it is that you're using. You've now opened the door, Estes Freightways, corporate management, CEO of Estes Freightways, and the rest of you out there, to being in a large lawsuit. Why you're using HIRERIGHT to screen potential employees and current employees shows how naive and clueless you really are. It's your job to investigate the company that you've hired to make sure they're credible. I don't think most of you in upper management, even though you have college degrees, know how to do that. But yet I'm sitting here showing everybody on this video that's going to be posted to YouTube and 7 other video sites, that this HIRERIGHT is a fraud. They're not credible information. They're corrupt. All they want is your money, and they're going to feed you all kinds of things. And you companies that don't want to tell your future prospective employees and current employees that you're using this fraudulent company, and this fraudulent, corrupt company is storing their personal data without encrypting it, and they're not sending out the report that caused them to lose their job or not get hired. Yeah. And you've seen where the FTC fined this company. Just think what they'll do to you trucking companies. I suggest some of you in upper management at the trucking companies and any other company out there, if you're in upper management and the CEO, grab hold of both of your ears, reach up with your left hand and your right hand, grab hold of both your ears, yank real hard as you can. Do it along with me, left hand, right hand. Yank real hard and remove your heads from your asses. Now, if you're new to the trucking business, or you've been in it a while and you just aren't into the trucking business like I am, and have been for 30 years, because I used to get my hands upon every publication I could when I was younger, back in the early 80s, from Commercial Car Journal to Overdrive magazine put out by Mike Parkhurst out of California. For those of you who are familiar with Overdrive magazine from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, as well as the owner-operator publication, Commercial Car Journal, and any other trucking publication I could get my hands on that would educate me as to the trucking business. And that's what I did. And then I became politically active for a short while, and then got out of that. But I've been driving for 30 years. I've drove for owner-operators, companies, local, over-the-road, line haul. I've pulled everything from tankers to end dumps to flatbeds to lowboys to doubles, triples, double 48s. So I got plenty of experience. I took my trucking when I was in it serious because that was my livelihood. It wasn't just a job, go in and then you go home and forget about it like a lot of you do. You don't live, eat, and breathe trucking like I did. So when I pass something on to you, listen to it. Here's what the truck driver DAC report is. Everything you need to know about the truck driver DAC report. I'm going to read it to you. The DAC report is to the truck driver as the credit report is to the consumer. Well, yes and no. Because the people working at DAC are not credible. And that's been proven just by watching my earlier videos. The DAC report is similar in that when you apply for a job as a truck driver, the first thing the prospective trucking company will check is your DAC. Well, yes and no, not all of them. If there are any negative entries, you could have a very difficult time finding employment. Your report consists of two parts. The first part is your MVR. And that's where the discrepancies come in because a lot of times they don't update that MVR, and most drivers aren't going to send every 6 months a fresh MVR to DAC when they were around. And the second is your work record, which is what your former employers have reported, supposedly, assuming that's what they did. Assuming. You're taking it off face value that that's what they did. You can't do that nowadays. The United States Investigation Services. Boy, they make it sound real official. USIS. Say it again. The United States Investigation Services. It's a private company. It has nothing to do with the federal government. This USIS is a private company, has nothing to do with the federal government. They are not the federal government. Was an information, notice it says was, an information and security services company serving human resources, insurance, government agencies, and national security markets. Located in Falls Church, Virginia. USIS offered background screening and risk management solutions for the transportation, healthcare, financial, gaming, and retail industries. See, they were making a lot of money, is what they were doing. And the naive employers were naive enough to assume, off face value, that this was a legitimate company, when it was not. Enabling companies to make informed, I'm going to show you where I'm at here, making informed decisions about people and investments. Of course, these solutions were provided to the trucking companies that were within their membership. The DAC services, this is where I'm at now, so you follow along with me. The DAC services were the driving force behind USIS. It had provided background screening products to service the transportation industry for 25 years. DAC stands for Drive a Check. However, it also became the ultimate truck driver nightmare. See where it's highlighted right there? It also became the ultimate truck driver nightmare. It is widely known that trucking companies very often report false claims to truck drivers' DAC reports. And when he says trucking companies, he's talking about an owner, more often than not, a terminal manager, or a safety supervisor. Those are the three components: the owner of a truck, an owner-operator, or a small or big trucking company with a terminal manager and a safety manager. Because if they don't like the way you part your hair, or you got a tooth missing, or a nose hair, or they just generally don't like you, and they asked you to do something that was illegal, or that you didn't want to do, for whatever reason, safety reasons or whatever, they would report false information against you, which is illegal right there. In 2009, I'm down here now. In 2009, I want you to read this with me, so we're all on the same. In 2009, USIS and HIRERIGHT formed the new HIRERIGHT Services, and DAC Services is now known as HIRERIGHT, DAC Trucking Solutions. See how they all, after all these lawsuits that you just read about from the Federal Trade Commission and the Department of Justice, all these lawyers suing them, you see what happened. Like I told you in the beginning of the video, DAC became USIS, USIS became HIRERIGHT after all these lawsuits from all these venues that were filed against them, cost them hundreds of millions of dollars. I'll read that one more time. In 2009, USIS and HIRERIGHT formed the new HIRERIGHT Services, and DAC Services is now known as HIRERIGHT DAC Trucking Solutions. Why are trucking companies able to place a false report on a driver's DAC report? The Fair Credit Reporting Act clearly states responsibility of furnishers of information to consumer reporting agencies under this code right here. Duty of furnishers of information to provide accurate information. Prohibition, reporting information with actual knowledge of errors. A person, here's where I'm at right now. There in the blue. A person shall not furnish any information relating to a consumer to any consumer reporting agency if the person knows or has reasonable cause to believe that the information is inaccurate. In other words, false, fake, phony. Even with such complete accurate wording, such as this, trucking companies are still capable of reporting false claims to DAC, and the driver is most often left with a ruined career. But he don't know about it for months, maybe even years, till he goes and applies for another job. It is important to understand why trucking companies are able to get away with this inaccurate reporting. Well, for starters, because you've got jughead moron terminal managers and safety managers. Usually the dispatcher very seldom has anything to do with reporting inaccurate information on a DAC report or a HIRERIGHT report. It's usually up to the safety manager and the terminal manager, usually not even somebody in the human resources department would do that. I've very seldom seen that. It usually falls under the terminal manager and the safety manager because they're a bunch of jugheads. Under this regulation, drivers would be in their right to file a lawsuit against the trucking company for furnishing inaccurate information. But this is where the big problem comes in for the truck driver. The trucking companies that do this know that the burden of proof is placed on the driver, not on them. This is how our justice system is set up. For example, we all know that there have been drivers who have given the trucking company their 2-week notice, and the company then tells them to drop off the truck and trailer at a certain location. The driver does as he or she is told. does everything correctly and professionally, ensures that all freight loads have been delivered, etc. And yet, later, they discover the trucking company has placed an abandoned vehicle on their DAC report, meaning the trucker took the truck and hid it somewhere, anywhere, and never bothered to tell the company the location of where they dropped the truck off. That's what they're getting at. If the driver chooses to sue the company for this false report, how does he or she prove it? Most often, no company management at the terminal will sign anything for the driver stating that they did indeed do as they were instructed. And that's something that's very important. They want you to sign all kinds of documents, but they don't want to sign anything. See, they've made it a one-way street. Where I come in, I make it a two-way street, or we got a fucking problem. You understand? We're going to have a fucking problem. And it's not going to be pretty. And it's not going to be one that they're going to win with me, because I don't back down. And I can get into that. But that's a whole nother video. Because I've took down 3 trucking companies. They had to shut down over me. I'm not shitting you when I say that either. It took a lot of work, a lot of effort. Most other drivers would be very leery of getting involved in fear of losing their job. Very often they are told to leave the vehicle at a drop yard where there will be no one around at the time to witness it or sign anything. Very important that you guys listen to this, because this guy's right. The driver could take pictures, but savvy lawyers would destroy these. Many drivers use a recording device to record their instructions from dispatch or whoever. But the chances of the judge allowing this as evidence is next to nil, 0. Generally, the law states that the person you are recording must know that they are being recorded. With the burden of proof placed on the plaintiff, the truck driver is up against great odds with multi-million-dollar trucking companies. Until truck drivers take a stand and fight back against these illegal actions by these trucking companies and the DAC reporting services, nothing will change. And as of 2019, very little has changed, because a lot of these truck drivers, the older guys like myself, with 20, 30 years experience or more, we know better. Most of us. There's a few of them out there that are kind of out to lunch. But it's the younger bunch, under 30 years old, that haven't been driving that long, that don't know all this. And they're the ones who are naive and clueless. They're not stupid. I'm not calling them stupid. I'm not calling them dumb. They just don't know. I didn't know at one time either. I just figured everybody was honest and on the up and up. I later found out about 3 years into this business, back in the 80s, early 1980s, that a lot of this isn't the world I come from. I quit a damn good job with good benefits and good pay with good working hours to get into this trucking industry. Only to find out it's one of the shadiest and seediest occupations that you could ever get in. I wished I'd have stayed with the job I had, because I'd been on it 5 years. I had some vacation and sick days and personal days built up, good retirement coming to me, and I should have just stayed. If I knew then what I know now, I never would have left. It was the biggest mistake I ever made. Clearly, the trucking companies who place false accusations on truck drivers' DAC reports are in direct violation of the law. In fact, DAC itself, here's where I'm at right now. In fact, DAC itself is in violation of the law. DAC breaks the law by allowing knowingly false information to remain on the DAC report. To remain. But since there is big money floating around between the trucking companies and DAC, the average hard-working truck driver is up against incredible odds. Now, I'm going to stop right there because there is some truth to that. You're up against incredible odds because most of the people getting into trucking, they only have a high school diploma, if that. And if they did go to college, they went to college to get a business degree or whatever, an arts degree or something stupid. What they didn't get into was studying law, a law degree, or transportation law. And it's gotten to the point, it has been this way since, I say, year 1995. 1995. I have encouraged anybody that wanted to get in the trucking business, before you ever set foot into it, you need a 2-year course of a law degree, especially transportation law. I'm going to say it again. If you're going to get in the trucking business, before you ever get into it, you need to take some classes at a college, any college, community college, or wherever you can get yourself into, a law degree, transportation law, and labor law. Because I'm going to tell you what, if you don't get into that and study it, when you get out here, you're going to get severely taken advantage of. They're going to see you're a greenhorn. You went to a truck driving school, some of you, and they're going to take advantage of you, and they're going to work you so cheap, and you're going to be working for free so many hours. They expect you to donate your time for free. For free. Whether it's at the dock being loaded or at the dock being unloaded. Whether you're at the dock at the shippers or whether you're at the dock at the receivers. They expect you to sit there 4, 5, 8, 10 hours maybe, and I've been on that end, yes I have, and not get paid, not one dime. Typical example, Salinas, California. I was driving for an owner-operator friend of mine, had his own authority and his own trailer. At that particular time, it was in the late 90s. I had a 97 W900 Kenworth. Aero cab. Conventional. Had a 48-foot trailer. I show up out there in Salinas, California. That's the heart of where all the strawberries and produce is grown out in California. Matter of fact, some of you have probably been to the grocery store, or your wife, girlfriend, whatever, and when you bought strawberries, it says Driscoll strawberries on the side. Driscoll strawberries. They come out of Salinas, California. The broker we brokered that from said the load was ready. So I drove 200 miles empty with my trailer up there to Watsonville, California, or Salinas, California. I think it's Watsonville. I get there and check in. They're still picking the strawberries out of the field. My load ain't ready, but the broker told me that. You can't trust these brokers. They'll tell you anything just to get you up there. Then they know once you're there, you ain't going to leave. See, that's the secret. They don't know me very well, though. Well, what happened was I wrote down my time and had the lady behind the desk at the strawberry place, Driscoll Strawberries, just write her name down. I didn't tell her why. I just said, write your name down. And I already wrote my time down when I arrived. I'm doing this for a reason now. They're still picking the strawberries out of the field. Well, after they pick them out of the field, they got to go to the cooler before they put them on my trailer, which is already pre-cooled. I got it down to whatever setting they wanted it at. It took them 18 hours to cool down those strawberries. I'm talking a whole trailer load, not a handful. To cool down those strawberries, 18 hours. I sat there for 18 hours. Back to why I had her sign her name with the time I arrived at. Because once they loaded them strawberries, I'm going to nail the broker or the shipper for detention time at $75 an hour for my truck and trailer. And back then that was cheap. We did get it because I filed the proper paperwork against them. It took 3 or 4 weeks before we seen the money, but I did get it out of them. I delivered it in the Midwest where I was supposed to. On time, with no damage. Those strawberries. When I got to where I was going in the Midwest to deliver the strawberries, at my 5:30 appointment time, which is when I arrived, I got there I think at 5 o'clock. My appointment was for 5:30. I backed in the door. Do you know, I sat there from 5:30 in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon waiting on them to unload it for free at a grocery warehouse. AG. From 5:30 to 4 o'clock in the morning. That is a whole work day for most people. Most people don't go to work till 7, 8 o'clock and they're off by 4 or 5. That's an 8-hour day. I sat there a whole 8.5 hours. And me and my owner-operator did not get compensated. I did file a detention time, got about half of that, against the receiver. But this is what they expect from you in the trucking industry. When I say work for free. Because they don't want to pay you for your time sitting at the docks, waiting to get loaded and waiting to get unloaded. Especially if you're a long-haul over-the-road trucker. Local guys who drive LTL who paid by the hour, it's a different story. This is why they can't find drivers out here in this industry. They do not want to pay you except when your wheels are turning, and then it ain't very much money. By the time you buy truck stop food and your living expenses on the road, you ain't making any money, and then by the time they take out taxes and you have to pay for anything else, you're not making any money. You became a sweatshop on wheels. And that's what we refer to it as. This over-the-road trucking is referred to as a sweatshop on wheels. That's why they can't find drivers. You people don't know how lucky you are to have any products at the grocery store, to be honest with you. Or at Home Depot or Lowe's. Because it all arrives somehow or another by over-the-road trucks. Eventually it gets put on a local truck to be delivered. But after everything I just showed you here, this is what the trucking industry does to people. A lot of people have lost their homes. They've lost their wives, their girlfriends. They've lost their entire livelihood because of these trucking companies, the way they treat people. And if you think the unions are any better, let me give you a quick story about Yellow Freight. The CEO and president of Yellow Freight, Bill Zollars, ran that company so far into the ground that it was on its last leg just a few years ago. Bill Zollars, CEO of Yellow Freight. Yellow Freight's a union company, but with the Teamsters Union, the Central States Teamster Union. And they let him get by with it for damn near a decade, running that company into the ground, costing it money, asking the employees to take pay cuts and pension cuts, health care benefit cuts, while Bill Zollars got big bonuses, the CEO and president of Yellow Freight, while the union did nothing. The Teamsters Union in particular, the Central States Teamster Pension Union. Not just the Teamster Union as a whole, because there's an East Coast division and a West Coast division. Then you got the Central Division. And I'm telling you, they did nothing. Finally, it got so bad that they were on their last leg that he got ousted, fired, and forced to retire. Bill Zollars. And now they're in survival mode. They're here, but they're surviving. That's about it. Because Yellow Freight ain't nothing like it used to be. You used to see Yellow Freight all over the place. But they ain't nothing compared to what they used to be. Thanks to Bill Zollars, the corrupt, fraudulent CEO of Yellow Freight. He got his big bonuses. The rest of the workers, the truck drivers, the dock workers, and the diesel mechanics, they all got the shaft. A lot of them left, quit, took early retirement. Some of them don't have any choice but to stay and ride it out. This is how the trucking industry treats people, and they wonder why they can't find drivers. So anytime you hear a report by some news reporter with the mainstream media or the local news reporter, wherever city you're at, that there is a truck driver shortage, be sure you nail that goddamn reporter in the ass with an email or a letter or a phone call and let them know just how full of shit their reporting is. Because there wouldn't be a shortage of truck drivers if this industry treated their employees, their drivers, their dock workers, and diesel mechanics like they're supposed to, like other companies do. I mean, Jesus Christ. This has been going on for so long. It's time, thanks to the internet and being able to shoot videos, we can now talk about it and spread the word like wildfire. And this is why they can't find truck drivers. It's not that there's a shortage, but the word's out. The word is out. You are not going to treat people like this and get by with it. And a lot of it has to do with management. That's where it all starts. It ain't the truck driver. It's not the diesel mechanic that works on the trucks, and it ain't the dock worker. And it's not the gals inside doing payroll that are the problem. It's management. It's always management. They hire the most stupidest, ignorant people they can find to put in management that don't know their ass from a hole in the ground. Half of them, more than half of them, 3/4 of them never drove a truck before. But they look good on paper because they got a college degree from one of those liberal colleges. Probably went to college to get an arts degree, found out he couldn't get a job, so he came down to a trucking company and they were stupid enough to hire him. And that's about what it boils down to. Because some of these managers, I'm telling you, in my 30 years of business, we had to talk about this, me and another guy here not too long ago. He's been in it as long as I have. Some of these people got no goddamn business being in this business. They ain't cut out for it. They don't know what they're doing, and they don't care. But a lot of this happened when a lot of jobs went overseas, put people out of work, and they had no place else to go. I'll go down to the trucking company and see if I can get on in management down here because I'm too lazy to work. I want to sit in an air-conditioned office all day or heated office in the wintertime and just act like I'm busy. Oh, they might pick up the phone once in a while. Some of the pissed, poorest management out there is from the trucking industry. They're terminal managers, safety managers, human resource managers who don't have a clue, and I'm running into that. This human resources. They hire these young girls between the ages of 18 and 25. Who knows what work they came from before they got hired there. Maybe Walmart or McDonald's, I don't know. Maybe some clothing store. And they don't have a frickin' clue about the trucking industry. Somebody like me comes walking in. 30 years. I give them my references on my employment application. They can't verify any of them. You want to know why? Because half the companies I drove for back in the 80s and 90s are out of business. They went bankrupt or they got sold out to another company. Maybe the other company just bought the equipment and let the terminals get sold off to some other entity. But over half the companies, and I counted over 22 companies I've worked for, have went out of business in my 30 years, and I'm not shitting you. Think about that. Then you go and apply for a job. Nobody can verify it. Hell, I don't keep track of where all these people went, and I'm not going to. I got other things in life to do besides worry about where all these owners and terminal managers went and what state they're living in and who they're working for now and how to get a hold of them. You know what? I ain't going to do it. So I go in and apply for a job nowadays they can't verify half of the employers I worked for because they ain't in business and haven't been in over 20 years. Because they got sold out, bought by another entity, or they went bankrupt and all the equipment got sold in the terminals. I got some owner-operators like that I drove for in the 80s and 90s too that are no longer in business, not because they went bankrupt, not because they sold out, because they retired. We're all getting older. Them guys decided to get out of it with these new rule changes, all these ELDs and all this log hours of service shit, and all this crap they got going on. They didn't want any part of it, so they retired and sold off all their equipment and their shop. They're not in business anymore. Yet I list them that I worked for them, but nobody can verify them. But these young kids, they think you're lying on your application because they never heard of this company, and there's no way to get in contact with them. And the reason they never heard of this company or seen any of their trucks is because they went out of business a long time ago, and you're still dripping wet behind the ears. And still, when I was driving for these companies, you were still in diapers. That's no shit. So it's no wonder you've never heard of these companies, because you was still in diapers when I was driving a truck. And now that you've grown a little older, these companies ain't around because they've already went bankrupt or sold off all their equipment and went out of business or retired. So you little 18 and 25-year-olds out there that think you know so much, that are in charge of human resources, need to think a little bit. Some of us have been around a lot longer than you have living. So when we list something on there, not that we're lying, you're not going to be able to verify it because they ain't in business anymore. Let me give you a piece of advice, you young'uns out there in the human resources department. It won't be long before, as you get older, you're going to be up against the same thing, because the company you're working for now ain't going to be in business very long. The other companies had been in business 10, 20, 30 years too. See where they're at now? They're out of business. For whatever reason. Fuel prices got high, the economy got bad, revenue didn't come in, forced to shut down. Your day's coming too. You're going to run into the same problem I'm telling you about. Nobody's going to be able to verify you worked where you're working now, because they ain't in business. There's no way to get a hold of them. I don't care if your company's been in business for 40 years. It's eventually going to get sold off and broken up into pieces. The day's coming. Think about that. Now, I've showed you about DAX services becoming USIS, USIS becoming HIRERIGHT. This is what I wanted to show you. Why you big corporate companies are using these services that are fraudulent and corrupt with all these lawsuits against them from the Federal Trade Commission to Department of Justice. I hope this video gets out. I hope you took the time to watch it. It's lengthy, I know it is. But I'm going to leave links below the video. I hope some of you print some of this off and hand it to the owners of your company and these terminal managers and human resource people that don't know what's going on, so they do know what's going on, and we can put a stop to some of this shit, because that's the only goddamn way it's going to happen, is if we all get together across the spectrum and start handing out this information. And sending them an email ain't going to work. You need to print it off and hand it to them in person so they can read it. Because if you send them an email, they may not read it. They don't have time for it. But if you hand them a piece of paper that you printed this off, they've almost got to read it if you put it in front of their eyes, in front of their desk. It may just catch enough people's attention. We can force these HIRERIGHT to shut down. Cost them a lot of money. Because you've seen the lawsuits against them. If they were a reputable, credible company, they wouldn't have all these lawsuits against them. But it's all about the bottom dollar with them, fattening their pocketbooks, their bottom line at the expense of these companies that don't know any better, that are naive and clueless. We got to wake these companies up. And the only way to do it's do it just like I said. Or you can choose to take action and do nothing, and years later wished you would have, when you have to fight your own game to get back in the game, or even stay in the game of trucking, if that's what you want to do. I choose to get out of it. I've done a long time ago. But no, y'all's gonna, especially you younger ones, are gonna have to get together. And you're gonna have to band together if you want to stay in the trucking business. It may be good now. Next year it may not be so good. You could be on the hot seat. Or 3 years down the road, you'll be going back to this video wishing, yeah, he's right. It happened to me too. Just like it happened to the rest of us. My suggestion is, if you get into trucking, don't plan on staying in it more than a year or two and get out of it and go find a more professional career. A more professional career that's honest, got some morals, some dignity, because trucking ain't it. That's my advice. Leave a comment below.